Chapter 15. The Bismark Three was loaded with tightly packed bars of uranium and equipped to handle any emergency that the mightiest intellects of Norlamin could foresee. Despite being quiescent, the ship was surcharged with power and seemed to Rizzo to be motionlessly straining at her neutral controls, eager to leave the unnatural environment of atmosphere and material substance behind and soar outward into the pure and undefiled ether. The 5 human beings were gathered near an open door of their cruiser, accompanied by the ancient scientists who had been working with them to defeat the monstrous race threatening the universe. The elders were joined by the terrestrials' many friends from the country of youth, and the immense vessel was surrounded by a throng of Norlaminians covering an area that could only be measured in square miles. Mental laborers from all over had abandoned their tasks to witness the launch, and even those who had retired to the placid nirvana of the country of age had returned briefly to the country of study to speed the ship of peace on its way. The majestic Fodan, chief of the 5, was concluding his address. "May the unknowable force guide your minor forces to a successful conclusion of your task. If by some unforeseen chance it is written on the sphere that you are to embark on this supreme venture, you can rest assured that our entire race's collective intellect supports me in my solemn affirmation that the Fenachrone will not prevail. In the name of all Norlamin, I bid you farewell." Crane replied briefly, and the group of earthly wanderers entered the elevator. As they ascended to the control room, each door sealed behind them, creating a manifold barrier. Rizzo operated the controls, and the colossal void cruiser slowly tilted upward until its narrow prow pointed toward the zenith. The vessel floated upward, gradually increasing in speed until it flew beyond the measurable atmosphere and the outermost limits of the green system. In interstellar space, Rizzo activated the superpowered detector and repelling screens, anchored himself to the driving console with a force, and set the power control to molecular. This propelled every molecule of the vessel and its contents with equal force, and he threw the plunger switch that unleashed the theoretically possible power of the driving mass of uranium. Staring intently into the visiplate, Rizzo made minor course corrections, then set the automatic forces that would guide them around any obstacles, such as the thousands of solar systems in their path. He released the restraining forces from his body and legs, wafted himself over to Crane and the 2 women with a small pencil of force, and said matter-of-factly, "Well, Bunch, we're on our way. We'll be traveling like this for some time, so we might as well get used to it. Any little thing you want to talk over?" "How long will it take us to catch them?" asked Dorothy. "Traveling this way isn't half as much fun as it is when you let us have some weight to hold us down." "It's hard to say, Dottie. If we had precisely 4 times their acceleration and started from the same place, we would overtake them in the same number of days they had the start of us, since the distance covered at any constant positive acceleration is proportional to the square of the time elapsed. However, there are several complicating factors in the actual situation. We started out 29 days behind them and 500,000 light-years away. It will take us quite a while to get to their starting point. I can't give you a precise estimate, as we will probably have to reduce this acceleration before we leave the galaxy to give detectors and repellers time to act on stars and other obstacles. The screens we have are powerful and fast, but we can only use them at a limited velocity in this crowded galaxy. However, in free space outside of it, we can increase our speed. Our acceleration is not exactly 4 times that of the other ships, but rather 3.9186. Nevertheless, we don't need to catch up to them to do our work. We can operate at 5,000 light centuries with ease. So it will take us somewhere between 39 and 41 days, but it could be a day more or less." Margaret asked, "How do you know they are using copper? Maybe their scientists stored up some uranium and know how to use it." I replied, "Nope, that's out like a light. First, Mart and I saw only copper bars in their ship. Second, copper is the most efficient metal found in quantity on their planet. Third, even if they had uranium or any metal of its class, they couldn't use it without a complete knowledge of, and ability to handle, the 4th and 5th orders of rays." Crane asked, "So do you think destroying this last Fenachrone vessel will be as simple as the others?" I pondered. Never thought about it from that angle at all, Mart. You're still the ground, and lofty thinker of the outfit, ain't you? Now that you mention it, though, We may find that the last of the Mohicans ain't entirely toothless at that. But say, Mart, how come I'm as wild and cockeyed as I ever was? Rovol's a slow and thoughtful old codger, and with his accumulation of knowledge, it looks like I'd be the same way. Crane replied, Far from it. Your nature and mine remain unchanged. Temperament is a basic trait of heredity, and is neither affected nor acquired by an increase of knowledge. You acquired knowledge from Rovol, Drasnik, and others, as did I, but you are still the flashing genius, and I am still your balance wheel. As for the Fenachrone toothlessness, now that you have considered it, what is your opinion? It's hard to say. They didn't know how to control the Fifth Order rays, or they wouldn't have run. They've got real brains, though, and they'll have something like 70 days to work on the problem. While it doesn't stand to reason that they could find out much in 70 days, still they may have had a setup of instruments on their detectors that would have enabled them to analyze our fields and thus compute the structure of the secondary projector we used there. If so, it wouldn't take them long to find out enough to give us plenty of grief. But I don't really believe that they knew enough. I don't quite know what to think. They may be easy and they may not. But easy or hard to get, we're loaded for bear, and I'm plenty sure that we'll pull their corks. So am I, really. But we must consider every contingency. We know for a fact that they had a detector for fifth-order rays, Rizzo interrupted. And if they had an analytical detector, they might just attack us as soon as we leave the galaxy. It's unlikely, but it's better to be prepared, I replied. Right, we'll make sure of that. Days passed without much excitement, and as Rizzo predicted, we couldn't maintain the intense acceleration we started with. We had to slow down before we reached the edge of the galaxy. We enjoyed the break from weightlessness, but it wasn't long before we saw fewer and fewer stars ahead of us. Once the way was clear, Rizzo turned up the power and set up a complex defense system. I was thinking of setting up 3 or 4 courses of 5-ply screens with a detector screen on the outside of each course, a repeller, a full-coverage ether ray screen, a zone of force, and a full-coverage fifth-order ray screen as a liner, he explained. Then, with them all set up on the board, but not out, we can throw out a wide detector. That detector would react upon the board at impact with anything hostile and automatically throw out the necessary courses. That sounds like a good plan, but I'm not an expert on rays, I said. What are you unsure about? I'm worried about leaving them on the board. The reaction isn't instantaneous, even for fifth-order rays. It might take a millionth of a second or so to set the courses. If they're using ether waves, we can block them easily, but if they have fifth-order stuff, they might attack us before our defenses are up. So I'm going to be cautious and put 1 course out. You can't put everything out, can you? I asked. Not everything, but pretty close. I'll leave a hole in the ether screen for visible light. Actually, scratch that. You can see just as well on the direct vision wall plates with light heterodyned on the 5th. We'll close all ether bands and leave open only the narrow band on which our projector is operating, and I'll protect that with a detector screen. I shall send out all 4 courses instead of just 1, then we shall know we are safe, I said. But what if they find our narrow band? If it were shut off by the detector, we would be safe, but would we not be out of control? Not necessarily, I explained. The other projector worked on 1 fixed band out of the thousands available, but this one is an ultra projector, an improvement invented at the last minute. Its carrier wave can be shifted at will from one band to any other one. I bet that's something the Fenachrone haven't got. Any other suggestions? Let's get busy. I sent out a single, quick detector ahead of the 4 courses. Rizzo fabricated a detector screen so tenuous that it would react to nothing weaker than a copper power bar. Then he drove home the plunger that sent that prodigious fan ahead of us with a velocity millions of times that of light. For 5 minutes, we stared at the unresponsive instruments. I had a hunch, Rizzo remarked with a grin. They didn't wait for us a second. They're running in a straight line with full power on, and don't intend to stop or slow down. How do you know? Asked Dorothy. By the distance. How far away are they? I know, Red Top, by what I didn't find out with that screen I just put out. It didn't reach them, and it went so far that the distance is absolutely meaningless, even expressed in parsecs. Well, a stern chase is proverbially a long chase, and I guess this one isn't going to be any exception. Every 8 hours, Rizzo launched his all-embracing ultra-detector, But day after day passed, and the instruments remained motionless after each cast of that gigantic net. The galaxy behind us had been dwindling from a mass of stars down to a small, faint patch. As Dorothy and Rizzo stared into the visiplate, everything was blank and black. Sheer, indescribable blackness, the utter and absolute absence of everything visible or tangible. "This is awful, Dick. It's just too darn horrible. It's quite frightening out here." Dorothy trembled as she leaned into his embrace. He wrapped his strong arms around her, providing comfort. "Don't worry, my love. Even I am scared purple by what's out there. The infinite and absolute are beyond our finite minds. But there's one thing that makes it all better. We're together." "You're right, darling." Dorothy returned his embrace with equal fervor. "I feel much better now. I thought I was yellow for feeling scared, but if you feel it too, then it's normal. Or are you just teasing me?" She held him at arm's length, searching his eyes for any sign of insincerity, then relaxed and nestled back into his arms. "Nope, you feel it too," he assured her as she rested her head on his shoulder. "Yellow? You?" He laughed heartily. "Maybe, but so is picric acid, nitroglycerin, and pure gold." "You flatterer," she chuckled. "But you know I love it. I'll kiss you for that." "It's awfully lonely out here without even a star to look at," she said after a while, then laughed again. "If the Cranes and Shiros weren't here, we'd be truly alone, wouldn't we?" "I'll say we would. But that reminds me of something. According to my calculations, we might have been able to detect the phenochrone on the last test, but we didn't. I think I'll try again before we turn in." He cast out the net of force once more, and the micro-ammeter needle flickered slightly. Whoopee! Mart, we're on them!" "Close." Crane hurried into the control room. "Anything but. We barely touched them, with a current of less than 1,000th of a microampere on a 1,000,000-to-1 step-up. But it proves our ideas are correct." The next day, Bismark III was running on Eastern Standard Time of the terrestrial United States of America. The two mathematicians covered sheet after sheet of paper with computations and curves. After checking and rechecking the figures, Rizzo shut off the power, released the molecular drive, and applied acceleration of 29.602 feet per second. The 5 human beings breathed a sigh of relief as an almost normal force of gravitation was restored to them. "Why the let-up?" Dorothy asked. "They're still a long way off, aren't they? Why not hurry up and catch them?" "Because we're going infinitely faster than they are now. If we kept up full acceleration, we'd pass them so fast that we couldn't fight them at all. This way, we'll still be going a lot faster than they are when we get close to them, but not enough faster to keep us from maneuvering relative to their vessel if things should go that far. I guess I'll take another reading on them." "I don't think that's a good idea," Crane suggested thoughtfully. "They might have perfected their instruments, but they may not have detected our ray last night. If that's the case, why alert them? They're probably on guard already, but it's a good idea to release the fifth-order screens with the fastest detector on guard. We're almost within reach of a light copper-driven ray now, but they can't send anything heavy this far. If they think we're overconfident, that's even better." "There," he said after a few minutes at the keyboard. "All set. If they detect us, I've set a force to make a noise like a New York City fire siren. I think we're being overly cautious, but I bet we won't hear anything from them before we attack. Furthermore—" The rest of his sentence was drowned out by a loud noise. Rizzo, still at the controls, turned off the noise and grinned at Crane. "You win the bet, Mart. I'll give you my shirt when it comes back from the laundry. It's a fifth-order detector ray coming in on band 40, 750, right in the middle of the order." Dorothy was surprised. "Aren't you going to put a ray on them?" "Nope. What's the use? I can read their ray as well as one of my own. Maybe they know that too. If they don't, we'll let them think we're innocent and let their ray stay on us. It's too thin to carry anything, and if they try to thicken it up, I've got an axe set to chop it off." Rizzo whistled a tune as he played with the controls. Margaret was uneasy. "Why are you so pleased about it?" "Because I don't like to hurt anyone, even if they're phenochrone. If they fight back, then I'll get mad enough to blow them up. But if they can't fight back, the worst that can happen is we can't beat them. They certainly can't beat us because we can outrun them. If we can't get them alone, we'll bring reinforcements from Norlamin." Crane spoke slowly. "I'm not so sure. There's a theoretical possibility that sixth-order rays exist. Can we detect them with fifth-order detection methods? Sixth? Nobody knows anything about them. But I've been surprised before, so maybe your suggestion isn't as crazy as it sounds. With 3 or 4 days until either side could send anything except on the 6th day, I set out to investigate. I worked tirelessly for the next 3 days, hardly stopping for rest. Finally, I announced to Mart, "They exist all right, and I can detect them. Look here," and I pointed to a small receiver with a bright red light. "Are they sending them?" "No, fortunately. They're coming from our bar. See, it shines blue when I put a grounded shield between it and the bar, and stays blue when I attach it to their detector ray." "Can you direct them?" "Not a chance in the world. That means a lifetime, probably many lifetimes of research, unless somebody uses a fairly complete pattern of them close enough to this detector so that I can analyze it. It's a good deal like calculus in that respect. It took thousands of years to get it in the first place, but it's easy when somebody that already knows it shows you how it goes." The Fenachrone learned to direct fifth-order rays so quickly, then, by an analysis of our fifth-order projector there? Our secondary projector, yes. They must have had some neutronium in stock too, but it would have been funny if they hadn't. At that, they've had intra-atomic power for ages. Silent and grim, I seated myself at the console and worked for an hour, weaving an intricate pattern of forces upon the ultra-projector's keys before I touched a plunger. "What are you doing?" "I followed you for a few hundred steps, but could go no farther." "Merely a little safety. First stuff. In case they should send any real pattern of sixth-order rays, this setup will analyze it, record the complete analysis, throw out a screen against every frequency of the pattern, throw on the molecular drive, and pull us back toward the galaxy at full acceleration, while switching the frequency of our carrier wave 1,000 times a second to keep them from shooting a hot one through our open band. It'll do it all in about a millionth of a second, too. I want to get us all back alive if possible." They've shut off their ray. They know we've tapped onto it. "Well, war's declared now. We'll see what we can see." I transferred the assembled beam to a plunger and sent out a secondary projector toward the Fenachrone vessel, as fast as it could be driven, close behind a widespread detector net. I soon found the enemy cruiser, but the distance was so immense that it was impossible to hold the projection anywhere in its neighborhood. They flashed beyond it and through it and upon all sides of it, but the utmost delicacy of the controls would not permit of holding even upon the immense bulk of the vessel, to say nothing of holding upon such a relatively tiny object as the power bar. As they rapidly moved through the warship, they caught glimpses of its formidable weaponry and the numerous crew members manning the controls of destructive engines. Suddenly, a screen closed behind them, and they felt a moment of terror, as it seemed that half of their dual personalities vanished. Rizzo laughed it off, comparing it to climbing a tree and pulling it up after oneself. Crane, on the other hand, was more concerned about the odds they faced. The enemy had hundreds of trained men, while they were only 2. However, Rizzo reassured him that their control system made up for the difference. While the enemy captain had to issue orders, Rizzo had everything under his hands. Finally, within battle range, Rizzo launched a direct attack that broke through the Fenachrone's defensive screen. However, the enemy countered with a beam of heterodyned force that struck the Bismarck and caused it to explode outward in gas. The defensive screens held, and Rizzo praised the enemy's power while taking time out for repairs. He also noticed the women on board, who were white and trembling. Rizzo told them to cheer up, as they hadn't seen anything yet. "That was just a preliminary exchange, like 2 boxers testing each other in the first round," said Dorothy, gazing into Rizzo's eyes and feeling reassured by his calm confidence. "But they hit us hard. There's a hole in our Bismarck as big as a house, going through 4 or 5 layers. We're not hurt, though. We can fix it easily, and we've only lost a few tons of inoson and uranium. We have plenty of spare metal. I don't know what I did to them, and they don't know what they did to us, but I bet they know they've been nudged," replied Rizzo. After completing repairs and adjusting their projection method, Rizzo activated the shifting slit and peered through it at the enemy vessel. Their screens were still up, so he launched a full attack with 4 bars and concentrated all remaining generator power into one frequency, probing for any weakness to unleash their destructive beam. Despite the Fenachrons' efforts to defend themselves, the terrestrials kept up their relentless offensive, causing mass damage to the Bismarck's outer and secondary skins. They're sending more stuff, and it's getting harder to handle. They must be building more projectors. We can do the same, but we're bigger and more efficient. Our only option is to overpower them with brute force, no matter how much power it takes, proposed Rizzo. Why not use those copper shells? Or are we not close enough yet? Asked Dorothy, her voice barely audible amidst the intense combat. Close. We're still over 200,000 light-years apart. There may have been longer-range battles in the universe, but I doubt it. And even if we could get copper to them, it would be like candy kisses compared to our weapons. My dear girl, these vessels have fields of force extending for thousands of miles. Even the biggest lightning flash would be nothing compared to it. With a series of integrals, I set up machines inside the fourth skin of the Bismarck, each one adding its output to the already inconceivable stream of energy being directed at the foe. As the flow increased, the intensity of the Fenachron attack diminished until it ceased altogether. I widened the slit and stopped its shifting to increase the efficiency of my weapon. With my face set in a fighting mask and my eyes hard as grey iron, I drove my now irresistible forces deeper and deeper. I directed my attack with my flying fingers on the console and my keen eyes on the secondary projector near the now doomed ship of the Fenachron. As the output of my generators still increased, I compressed a searing hollow sphere of seething energy upon the furiously straining defensive screens of the Fenachron. The heaviest possible screen was sent out, only to go down before my irresistible onslaught. Finally, as the sphere still contracted, the defenders' screens could not keep their vessel away from that awful field of force, and simultaneously the prow and the stern of the Fenachron cruiser were bared to that unimaginable field of force. In that same instant of collapse, the enormous mass of power, copper in the Fenachron cruiser, and the vessel's every atom exploded into pure energy at the touch of that unimaginable field of force. In that awful moment before I could shut off my power, it seemed to me that space itself must be obliterated by the very concentration of the unknowable and incalculable forces there unleashed. It was the last stand of the monstrous civilization of the Fenachron against the forces of universal peace. The end. This concludes Bismark Three, a science fiction novel. By Jettery B. Ryder. Narrated by Alexander Atkins. We thank you. You could have picked from dozens of other books, but you took a chance and chose this one. So thank you for downloading this book and for making it all the way to the end. Visit morrisbookshop.com for a very special bonus offer and to be notified when new books come online. Again, that website is morrisbookshop.com.